Tears filled Akwudo's eyes as she listened. She had always suspected her auntie's cruelty, but this betrayal was beyond anything she had imagined. The next day, she met Chijioke barely holding herself together. "It's worse than I thought," she whispered, her voice trembling. "They planned it all." Chijioke looked at her with concern but spoke firmly. "Don't let this break you. This is the time to act, but we have to be smart about it. You can't stay there anymore. It's too dangerous." "But where would I go?" Akwudo asked, her mind racing. "We need to find you a safe place," Chijioke said after a moment of thought. "You need an apartment, somewhere you can stay while you work out a plan. It's not safe to keep meeting like this." Together, they traveled to the outskirts of town, where they found a small, modest apartment. It wasn't much, but it was a refuge, somewhere Akwudo would escape to. Chijioke helped her arrange everything, and soon she had a key to her new home. With a newfound sense of determination, Akwudo clutched the key tightly in her hand. She felt a small sense of hope flicker inside her for the first time in months. Next, Chijioke said, "We need to gather information. Anything you can find, documents, business record, anything that we can use to expose your auntie and your uncle." Akwudo nodded, a plan forming in her mind. "I'll find something," she promised. "Good," Chijioke said. "Bring it to the apartment. We'll meet there from now on, and we'll figure out the next step." With their plans in motion, Akwudo returned to her auntie's house, feeling both nervous and determined. She knew she couldn't let fear control her anymore. Now, she had a safe place and a way to fight back. For the first time, she felt a sense of control over her future. The following day, as soon as Akwudo's auntie and uncle left for work, she made her move. She hurried into her uncle's office and found his documents, the deeds to the house, cars, and shop. Her heart raced as she quickly gathered everything and stuffed them into her bag. There was no time to waste. She rushed to meet Chijioke, who was waiting anxiously for her. Chijioke took the documents and without hesitation made copies of them. "We can't let them suspect anything," he said as he printed the replica. "Take this back and place them exactly where you found them. They must not know what we are doing." Akwudo nodded, her hand trembling as she clutched the fake documents. She hurried home, carefully placing everything back in its original spots. Her heart pounded in her chest, but she knew this was just the beginning. A week passed, and Chijioke sold off her uncle's property discreetly, channeling the fund into a crypto account he had set up for Akwudo. By converting the money into cryptocurrency, there was no trace of the transaction. Her auntie and uncle had no idea their wealth was vanishing right beneath their noses. Next, Chijioke had a new request. "We need access to your uncle's bank account," he said. "Try to figure out his phone password and how to access his bank app. Once we have that, we can do more." Akwudo agreed and began observing her uncle carefully. She noticed that he always used his fingerprint to access his phone, and one evening, she saw him enter his password while transferring money to her aunt. The next day, Akwudo approached her uncle, feigning innocence. "Uncle, there is this dress I saw at the supermarket. Could you send me some money to buy it?" she asked sweetly. Her uncle, distracted, agreed to send money to her auntie. In her presence, he unlocked his phone, confirming what she had suspected. His fingerprint was the key to his bank app. Her auntie later brought maternity gowns for her, a clear reminder of the life they were controlling. Akwudo played along. "Auntie, I am getting so fat. What is wrong with me?" she said, pretending to be concerned. Her auntie smiled and lied easily. "I've been taking good care of you. You are healthy, that's all." Akwudo nodded, hiding her disgust. She had to keep up the act until their plan was complete. The next night, She called Chijioke and excitedly told him that she had the information they needed. He was thrilled and asked her to meet him the next day. Everything was falling into place. The trap was set, and now it was only a matter of time before her auntie and uncle would face the consequences of their greed and cruelty. The next day, Akwudo met with Chijioke, her heart pounding as she finalized their plan. Chijioke handed her a small pocket of strong sleeping pills. This will make sure your uncle, your auntie, and even the gateman sleep deeply. We'll have enough time to do what we need to, he said. I will be waiting outside the gate with a friend. Just follow the plan. Since Akwudo had been in charge of cooking, it wasn't difficult to slip the pills into their dinner. That evening, she prepared a rich vegetable soup, making sure to mask the taste of the sleeping pills. She served her uncle, her auntie and the gateman, watching carefully as they ate. Everything seemed to go according to plan as they soon retired to bed, completely unaware of what was about to happen. Once they were sound asleep, Akwudo crept to the door and unlocked it, letting Chijioke and his friend inside. Her heart racing as they quietly made their way to her auntie and uncle's room, careful not to make a sound. Chijioke quickly accessed her uncle's phone using his fingerprints. Within minutes, they transferred all the money from his account into a crypto wallet under Akwudo's name, leaving no trace. The transaction was expertly deleted, ensuring her uncle would have no idea what had happened until it was too late. They moved on to her auntie's phone and repeated the process, wiping out her account just as easily. By the end of the night, both her uncle and her auntie were completely broke, unaware that their wealth has disappeared while they slept. Chijioke and his friend walked swiftly, knowing they only had a short window before the effect of the sleeping pills wore off. When they finished, Akwudo hurriedly returned everything to its place and slipped back into her room. She lay down, her heart still racing, but everything had gone smoothly. The next day, Chijioke called and asked her to meet him again to discuss their next step. The game was not yet over, but Akwudo was ready for whatever came next. The next morning, Akwudo decided it was time to confront her auntie. Just as Chijioke had advised, she walked into the living room where her auntie was seated, and with tears welling up in her eyes, she began speaking softly. "Auntie, I've missed my period," Akwudo said, her voice trembling. "I think I'm pregnant, but I haven't slept with any man. How is that possible?" Her auntie's expression remained calm, almost too calm, and she didn't seem surprised at all. Akwudo's heart sank deeper as she watched her auntie's lack of reaction. Desperation and anger took over as Akwudo fell to her knees, sobbing. "Auntie, are you aware?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Her auntie looked down, avoiding eye contact. The silence in the room grew heavier. Akwudo's heart was pounding, and her emotions spiraled into confusion and hurt. "Is that why you made me stay home? Is that why I've been feeling sick? You knew all along, didn't you?" Akwudo cried bitterly, her tears flowing uncontrollably. Her auntie finally glared at her husband before looking back at Akwudo. "Calm down," she said. "Let me explain." Akwudo wiped her tears, but the ache in her chest wouldn't stop. "Explain what? How did I get pregnant without my knowledge?" Her auntie took a deep breath before answering. "You know I've been married for over 15 years without a child. Your uncle and I have tried everything. Nothing worked. So we decided to have you help us. That night when we celebrated, I put something in your drink to make sure you wouldn't know what was happening. My husband, your uncle, is the father of the child." Akwudo felt her whole world crashing around her. "You drugged me?" she whispered in disbelief. "You made the decision about my life without my consent?" Her auntie avoided her gaze, clearly uncomfortable with the confrontation. "I wanted to tell you, but I didn't know how. I couldn't find the right word. That was the only way." Akwudo, shocked, turned into fury. "You betrayed me, auntie. You ruined my life. Do you even realize what you've done? This is not just wrong, this is illegal. Tears streamed down Akwudo's face as she left out all her grief and anger, even though she had known their plans all along. This was the moment she allowed herself to feel the full weight of the betrayal. She had to cry, not just for what had been done to her, but for the future they had stolen from her. Her auntie, sensing the depth of Akwudo's devastation, tried to comfort her. If you just do this for me, if you deliver this baby, I promise to send you to the university. Consider it the price you pay for your education. Akwudo's eyes flared with renewed anger. The price I pay? Auntie, my father, your brother, sacrificed everything to send you and your siblings to school. He dropped out of school to let you all finish, and this is how you repay him? What did you ever give my father in return for his sacrifice? There was a long, unbearable silence. Her auntie couldn't respond. Nothing, Akwudo said, her voice laced with bitterness. And now I have to pay with a child? Never! I will abort this pregnancy. Her auntie gasped, immediately dropping to her knees in front of her, begging desperately. Please, Akwudo, don't do that. Don't take the child away from us. Akwudo stared coldly at her auntie. Fine, I won't abort the child. But since this is a transaction for you, let's treat it like one. You will open an account in my name and deposit 10 million naira into it. That is the price for this child. Her auntie shook her head, panicking. I don't have that kind of money. Then you are not serious, Akwudo said, standing up to leave. Wait, her auntie cried. I will pay you 5 million now, and after the baby is born, I will pay the rest. Akwudo pretended to consider the offer for a moment, then nodded. Deal. With that, she weakly turned to her room, her body trembling with a mixture of pain, anger, and grief. She sobbed quietly into her pillow, feeling the weight of everything that had happened. The betrayal was more than she could bear, but now she had to play the game her auntie had started, and she was determined to come out on top. That night, as Akwudo auntie and uncle sat in their bedroom, they whispered carefully about their next move. I will open the account, her auntie said, but I will make sure I'm the signatory. After she gives birth, we will get rid of her and keep the child for ourselves. Her uncle leaned in closer, nodding. And your family? What will you tell them? That's easy, her auntie replied with a wicked smile. We will stage an accident just like what happened to her parents. After 2 months, no one will care anymore. We will have the child and a perfect life. Her uncle grinned, clearly pleased with the plan. What if she is pregnant with twins? Her auntie's eye lit up. Even better, she said, laughing. As their cruel laughter echoed through the house, Akwudo, hidden nearby, listened in horror. She could hardly breathe as the full extent of their evil plan sank in. Quickly and quietly, she slipped out of the room and dialed Chijioke's number, her hands shaking as recounted what she had just overheard. Chijioke remained calm on the other end. Don't worry for now, he said. They won't harm you yet because of the child. They needed the baby. We will come up with a plan, but for now, just stay safe. They will play a dangerous game, but we will be one step ahead. Akwudo hung up the phone, her heart heavy but her resolve even stronger. She knew she had to stay vigilant, not just for herself, but for the life growing inside her. The next morning, just as dawn broke, a group of men arrived at their doorstep with stern expression, holding an official-looking document in hand. Akwudo's uncle, still grudgy, answered the door. Good morning, one of the men said, handing him a notice. We are here to inform you that you have 2 weeks to vacate the property. Vacate what? Her uncle backed in confusion. This is my house, a personal property. You must have the wrong address. No mistake, the man said calmly, pulling out the documents. This property was sold a month ago to Mr. Johnson Smith. Here, take a look. Her uncle grabbed the paper and stared at it. His heart raced as his eyes scanned the signature. It was unmistakably his. Yes, this is my signature. But I didn't sell my house. He ran inside, searching frantically through drawers and pulling out the fake document, his hands trembling as he compared them to the papers the men held. Suddenly, reality hit him like a blow to the chest. His house, his cars, everything was gone, sold with the real document in someone else's possession. The shock was too much. His leg buckled beneath him and he collapsed to the floor. His wife screamed, rushing to his side. They called for an ambulance and soon he was rushed away to the hospital. Hours later, after thorough examination, the doctor cleared him for discharge. But before they could leave, more bad news struck. His phone rang. Another call, this time from his office. His shop had been sold too, and he was given 2 weeks to vacate the building. He stared at his phone, his hand shaking uncontrollably. This can't be happening. When the hospital bills came, he confidently handed over his card, but to his horror, the transaction was declined. Try again, he muttered in disbelief, handing over another card. His wife tried her card with the same result. Insufficient balance, the receptionist said, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. What is going on? His wife cried, her voice breaking. In desperation, her uncle called his close friend Chika, who quickly arrived and paid the bills. As they left the hospital, Chika looked at him with concern. "What happened to you?" he asked. "Did you offend someone? How could this all be possible?" "I don't know," her uncle whispered, his voice hollow. "I can't think of anyone." Chika's eyes narrowed. This looked like an inside job. "Whoever did this know everything about you. Your property, your accounts. Someone close must have helped them. Who could you have offended?" Her uncle sat in silence, his mind racing but coming up blank. Chika sighed. "You need to rest before you collapse again. But we need to figure out what is going on." As they returned home, the weight of everything fell heavily on her uncle's shoulders. He knew his life was unraveling and there was nothing he could do to stop it. When they got home, her uncle slumped into a chair, rubbing his temples. "Who have we offended that could have done this?" he muttered. His wife paced the room, her mind racing. It could only be Akwudo, but that girl is too small and innocent. Besides, she just found out last night. Who else could it be? Her uncle shook his head. Mr. Johnson Smith wouldn't indulge in such petty dealings. The man has wealth beyond measures, lands, houses, cars across the country. Why would he need to trick us for this property? What about the gatesman or the driver? The wife suggested. No, those uneducated fellows wouldn't know how to pull off something like this. Her uncle replied. I'm more inclined to think it's someone from the office. Maybe my assistant. As they discussed, Akwudo entered the room, her eyes red and swollen from crying. Auntie, I want some ice cream and meat pie, she said softly. And when are we going to the bank? Her auntie quickly composed herself. Don't worry, Akwudo. We are in a bit of a situation right now. But by next week, we will go to the bank. Everything will be fine. Okay, Akwudo nodded, wiping her eyes. But what about my ice cream? I'm craving it. I know, dear, her auntie replied. Gently, I will send the gateman to get it for you. Just focus on taking care of yourself and the baby, okay? Akwudo nodded again, her demeanor convincing them both that she was too naive and innocent to be behind their troubles. They ruled her out completely as a suspect. She turned and went back to her room, leaving them to their discussion. Just then, her uncle's phone rang. It was the bank. The urgency in the caller's voice was unmistakably. Sir, you need to come to the bank immediately. Without hesitation, her uncle and auntie rushed out of the house, forgetting the doctor's advice to rest. Whatever was happening at the bank seemed even more pressing now. When they arrived at the bank, the manager wasted no time. Sir, all your funds have been used to purchase goods online, and there is no trace or link to where the transaction details are. And let me remind you, the loan you collected from us will be due by month's end. the manager stated firmly. The auntie blinked in shock. Loan? What loan? My 150 million naira gone without a trace. How is that possible? The manager frowned, his voice edged with frustration. Are you avoiding your debt, sir? I respect you, but I don't understand this trick. You've made the transaction using your phone and deleted the record. Now you expect me to trace it? The bank can't do that, especially when everything points back to you. The uncle's face drained of color as the gravity of the situation hit him. Could it be? Could it be? Could it be who? His wife interrupted, a worried look in her eyes. How much do you owe the bank? 50 million naira, he replied weakly, his voice barely above a whisper. But I had more than 150 million in my accounts. How could this happen? Sir, the manager continued, the address for the delivery of the good is your shop. This is all happening under your name and from your device. There is no one else we can hold responsible. The uncle struggled to rise from his chair, his hands shaking. This can't be true. It's impossible. But as he attempts to stand, his body gave out again. He collapsed to the floor, his wife screaming for help. Once again, he was rushed back to the hospital, leaving his wife in a state of shock. Now, not only were their properties gone, but all their funds had vanished, and the burden of a massive debt loomed over them. As his wife sat beside his hospital bed, tension filled the air. She had been sensing something was off for a while but hadn't been able to place it. Are you cheating on me? She asked, her voice laced with suspicion. Because we both know only someone close to you could access your phone. You don't even let me touch it. He tried to mask his discomfort. No, I'm not. You know I'm not. She narrowed her eyes. Then, why do I feel like there is something fishy going on? Before he could respond, his phone rang. Trying to shield him from further bad news after all that had happened, she picked it up. What she had made her stomach drop. The voice on the other end was unfamiliar, but what the woman said shattered her world. Darling, I'm calling about the money for the children's school fees. I've sent my account detail, but I haven't received anything. The school is on my neck. Hello? Hello? Are you hearing me? And when are you planning to divorce that woman you call your wife? Her breath caught in her throat, and she hung up without saying a word. She stared blankly at the phone in her hand, the weight of the betrayal suffocating her. Who was that? Her husband asked, noticing her silence. Still staring at the phone, she whispered, Who is Engineer Godi? When he didn't answer, tears streamed down her face. Answer me! Who is Engineer Godi? The truth hit her like a punch to the guts. After all she had sacrificed, 15 years of marriage, loyalty, even the veiled plan she had to deceive her niece and steal her child, this was how he repaid her? You have another woman? Children? All this time? He struggled to explain, but she cut him off, her voice trembling with hurt and rage. After everything I've done for you, my life wasted, I ruined my own niece's life for you? We planned to kill her for what? I thought I was helping us. He sighed, trying to defend himself. I can explain. I'm the only son in my family. I needed children to carry on my lineage, and you couldn't give me that. So all those business trips, all those lies about contracts, about meetings, you were with her? I was bragging about you to my friends, telling them how loving and patient my husband is. She shook her head in disbelief. Samson, you are a wicked man. Don't act so innocent, he spat back. Don't bring God into this. You tricked me into this marriage. You thought I wouldn't find out about your past, the abortions, the reckless life you led before we met, and now you expect me to be tied to your cause? No, I won't let you drag me down. His words stung, but the betrayal cut deeper. She stormed out of the hospital, her heart heavy with regret, anger, and sadness. She had sacrificed everything, her dignity, her morals, her family, all for a man who never truly loved her? She remembered the money she gave him to start his business, the money she earned from her past. And now, this was how he repaid her? Her world was falling apart, and she had no idea how to pick up the pieces. When she entered the house, she called Akwudo. Her voice echoed through the quiet hall, but there was no response. She felt a knot from her stomach, a sense of dread creeping in. She hurried to Akwudo's room, hoping to find her there, but instead, she saw an envelope lying on the table. With trembling hands, she opened it and began to read. By the time you read this letter, my siblings, the child and I will be far away from you. Somewhere you and your evil husband will never find us. This is just the beginning of your problem. You haven't seen anything yet. When I'm done with both of you, you won't live to tell the story. Next time, before you choose someone to mess with, think twice because they might be your downfall. Don't even think about going to the village for help. I've already sent a recording of your conversation where you and your husband plotted to drug and rape me, make me pregnant, and then kill me to steal my child. Any move you make against me, and this information will be sent to the police station. Enjoy what is left of your miserable life. She dropped the letter, her hands shaking uncontrollably. Her breath came in shallow gasps as the full weight of Akwudo's word hit her like a punch to the guts. Her knees buckled and she stumbled back, slumping against the wall. Just then, her husband entered the room. Seeing her pale, tear-stained face, he walked over and grabbed the letter from the floor. He read it quietly, and as the reality of their situation sank in, his face hardened. "We've underestimated her," he muttered, his eyes cold. He turned to his wife, fury flashing in his eyes. "This little girl has destroyed us." Before she could respond, he dropped the letter and said coldly, "I want a divorce." Her heart stopped. "No," she cried, rushing to him. "No, please, I can't. I don't want to divorce. Where will I go? My brothers will kill me if I return to the village. You know they will never forgive me." He glared at her, his patience completely gone. "You ruined my life," he roared, grabbing her by the throat. "This was your plan from the beginning. You dragged me into this, and now look where it led. Everything I've worked for is gone." He pushed her away, and she stumbled, gasping for breath. He turned away, grabbing a suitcase from the closet, shoving his clothes inside. Tears streamed down her face as she pleaded, "Samson, don't leave me. We can fix this. We can figure out something out together." But he ignored her. "I'm leaving. You can stay here if you want, but when the new owner of this house show up, they will throw you out. I'm not going down with you." "Where are you going?" she asked weakly, her voice barely audible. "To my other wife's house," he said flatly. "Thank God I set her up with a business before all this happened. I will be fine." Her heart shattered. "What about me?" she sobbed. "What am I going to do?" He stopped at the door, looking at her with disgust. "That's your problem. You've ruined everything for yourself." Without another word, he walked out, leaving her alone in the cold silence of the house, broken and defeated. She collapsed to the floor, her tears soaking into the carpet as the weight of her decision suffocated her. Everything she had done to climb higher had only pulled her into the abyss. Akwudo's revenge was complete, and she was left with nothing. Confused and overwhelmed with desperation, she ran outside, chasing after her husband as he headed towards the gates. "Samson, please don't leave me," she begged, tears streaming down her face. "I'm begging you, don't abandon me now." But he didn't stop. With a look of cold indifference, he pushed her away and walked out of the gate. As she stood there in shock, she saw in the distance a car parked by the roadside, and inside, his other wife and children were loading his luggage into the truck. Without a second glance, they drove off together, leaving her standing alone in the streets. At that moment, the harsh truth hit her like a wave. She was the only one who had truly lost everything. Her husband had another family, his future still intact, Meanwhile, her world had crumbled to dust. The thought clawed at her mind. She could have adopted a child, just as Samson had warned her. He had never fully supported her twisted plan from the start. Why hadn't she listened? Her thoughts spiraled further. Was this her punishment? Maybe her late brother and his wife's spirit were seeking revenge for the cruel betrayal. Her action had set off a chain of destruction, and now she was paying the price. Suddenly, she felt something inside her snap. Her mind became clouded with guilt and regret. She began to behave erratically, shouting into the empty air, calling out the names of her dead brother and his wife, pleading for their forgiveness. "Please forgive me! I didn't mean for this to happen," she screamed, collapsing to her knees on the pavement. "Akwudo, I am sorry. Forgive me." The gate man, alarmed by her sudden outburst, rushed over and tried to help, but she was inconsolable. He quickly called for an ambulance, and soon she was taken to the hospital. The doctors there discovered that she was losing her grip on reality, her mind unraveling from the weight of her guilt and regret. She constantly mumbles the name of her brother, his wife, and Akwudo, sometimes kneeling and begging them for forgiveness, sometimes shouting in terror at unseen spirits. As her mental state deteriorated, the doctors had no other choice but to admit her to a mental health facility. Her condition worsened until it became a full-blown madness. The once proud woman who had schemed so much was now lost in a world of delusion and torment. When the hospital contacted her brothers, informing them of her situation and asking them to come take her, none of them wanted anything to do with her. They refused to visit, let alone take responsibility for her. She had become a disgrace to the family, and they chose to distance themselves from her and her tragic fate. Alone, abandoned by everyone she once knew, she remained in the mental institution, haunted by the ghost of her past and the consequences of her actions. Akwudo and her siblings had found peace in their new life abroad, far away from the pain and deceit of their past. They were safe and cared for, thanks to Chijioke, who had been their pillar of strength throughout the ordeal. Despite everything she had gone through, Akwudo still hesitated when Chika proposed to her, unsure if she was ready to trust again, or if she could truly let someone into her broken heart. Sensing her fear, Chijioke took her hand gently and looked her in the eyes. "Akwudo, I will love and protect you and your child as my own. You don't need to fear anymore. I will never let anyone harm you or your family ever again." His sincerity and love broke down her walls, and with time, Akwudo realized that she could have a fresh start, a family built on trust and love, not deception and control. She said yes, and they were married in a small, intimate ceremony filled with hope and joy. Soon after, Akwudo gave birth to a beautiful baby girl who became a symbol of her new beginning. She and her siblings returned to school, determined to build a bright future for themselves. The pain of their past slowly faded, replaced by the love and happiness they now shared as a family. Together, they found healing and moved forward. In the end, Akwudo's story became one of resilience, reminding her that no matter how dark the circumstances, there is always hope for a better tomorrow. And as they all live happily ever after, she realized that true family is not about blood, but about love, care, and the people who stand by you when the world turns against you.